Good evening and welcome everyone, councillors for press and public, to this ordinary meeting of the Town Council. This meeting will be held under regulations allowing local authorities to meet formally using remote technology. It is being streamed live and is available for view on our website. It is important for everyone participating in this meeting to keep your microphones on mute when you are not speaking to reduce disruption from background noise. Most decisions will be made by the general assent of those present. However, if a vote is required, each councillor's name will be read out by me or the town clerk, and you will be asked to state whether you are for, against, or abstain. If at any time the council's technology fails and we need to adjourn the meeting for a short period, I will confirm this and ask those present to turn off their cameras and mute their microphones while the problem is rectified, and I will then confirm when the meeting resumes. We can only monitor our technology and cannot halt the meeting if a member of the press or public experiences technology issues. I will now ask the town clerk to carry out a roll call of all councillors and ask you to confirm that you are present. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Baker. I'll take that as a no. Councillor Blanchard Cooper.
Present.
Councillor Buckland.
Present.
Councillor Chase.
Present.
Councillor Long.
Present.
Councillor Monoy.
Present.
Councillor North East.
Yep, here, present.
Councillor Price.
Present.
Councillor Rhodes.
Present.
Councillor Seeks.
Present.
Councillor Tandy.
Present.
Councillor Turner.
Present.
And Councillor Dr. Walsh.
Present.
Item number 1 on the agenda, mobile phones. Members are reminded to switch their mobile devices to silent for the duration of the meeting, and we ask to note that previously approved protocol for remote meetings which is in place for the duration of this meeting. Item 2 on the agenda, apologies, and we have none. Item number 3 on the agenda is declarations of interest. The standing declarations are noted. Members and officers are reminded to make any other declarations if they become apparent at the appropriate time during a meeting. Are there any further declarations? I'll take that as a no for the time being. Moving on to the next item, number 4, the minutes of the last meeting. The minutes of a meeting held on the 19th of November 2020 and the 21st of December 2020 have been circulated and now can be found on pages 6 to 20. In accordance with the Town Council Standing Orders, Section 9A, members are reminded that no discussion of the draft minutes of a preceding meeting shall take place except in relation to their accuracy. And I therefore ask if everyone is happy that they may be approved.
Can I comment, please?
Yes.
Can I ask, at a previous meeting, it was discussed about the regeneration and the contractors had been decided, and Councillor Dr. Walsh had stated that we would be informed. This isn't in any of the minutes I've read, so I'm just wondering why that didn't appear. Thank you.
Can the town clerk respond, please?
Absolutely. We're not. This isn't really what the minutes item is for, but just to speed things along. There is no. There has been no announcement as yet. That is why you haven't been informed, Councillor Turner. It will be announced fairly shortly, I understand.
Thank you, Peter. So, is everyone happy with the minutes of the last meeting?
Agreed, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, happy with
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you, everyone. Arrangements will be made for these to be formally signed when circumstances allow, and this will be recorded in the minutes. Item number 5 on the agenda, Town Mayor's report and urgent items. Since we last met, I've still managed to keep myself busy. There's been a lot of questions and people getting frustrated about the vaccinations, etc. But now slowly the information is feeding through, and personally I found it frustrating, but people are always guessing the situation about, but it is difficult and totally understandable because you have a vaccination centre which is running 3/4 surgeries patients. So all that's coming out well, and I managed to get in one carol concert at Christmas, even albeit in a car park. But so that's good. And I would ask the town clerk to advise if there's any urgent items.
There are none, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 6 on the agenda of public forum. In accordance with the remote meetings protocol, which has been introduced by the Town Council, and any members of the public wishing to address the Council or any of its committees during the remote meetings should have emailed their submission to us one clear day before the meeting. I believe we have one representation, Town Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, there's one representation from Mr. Chester, who asks, members may have witnessed 2 statements from the leader of Arran Council at its meeting on 13th January. The first informed us that Arran would not be seeking to close Pier Road to through traffic this summer, but that an application may be forthcoming from the Town Council to do so. Where in the budget is the money to enable this to be done properly this year, and at what meeting will this decision be made? Second, the leader of Arran informed us that spades would be going into the ground to deliver the public realm project in Littlehampton this March. What sense is there in committing such a large sum of money to a community wardens experiment to run for precisely the same length of time the town centre is to be dug up? We are promised the public realm scheme will deliver increased private sector investment into the town in the form of the long list of vacant commercial properties and sites available. Surely, at its completion, a relaunch for the town is the opportunity for new events and wardens if required. In the interim, every effort should be focused on presenting the visioned, finished project to potential investors, not using up scarce funds in this way. Back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Would you like me to respond to the first part?
We've got a response through you, Mr. Mayor.
Fine.
I think you're muted.
You're on mute.
Oops, don't know how that happened. We thank Mr. Chester for his questions and comments. The position with regard to Pier Road is unclear, and further clarification is being sought from the District Council. The Town Council has made no provision to deliver this proposal as to date. The District Council were taking this forward with the Town Council supporting by potentially coordinating some entertainment in the vicinity. If this scheme goes ahead, the entertainment aspect will be discussed during the next committee cycle. Regarding the public realm, it is anticipated that there will be a launch event and association marketing promotion. This is not linked to a community warden scheme, which is aimed at the whole town. However, one key area will be the town centre, where the problems of shoplifting, antisocial behaviour and breaches of the public space protection order will be important issues to combat to aid local businesses post-lockdown. For information, the interviews for the community warden posts are to be held next week. Please can I remind members that public questions are not an opportunity to open up debate at this point, but opportunities do exist elsewhere in the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, can I please ask that you turn the meeting chat on?
It is.
Brilliant, thank you.
Moving on to the next item on the agenda, item number 7.
I had my hand up to try and say something.
Sorry, Dr. Walsh, please come in.
On the Pier Road, that's the one I wanted to comment on. My strong personal view is that I would like to see Pier Road have seasonal summer closing, as happened last year, but in a much better, properly managed way, with proper planters, with tables and chairs able to be set out in the road so that people can be encouraged to sit, drink, eat and enjoy their meal and company in normal times along Pier Road. I'm still strongly of that opinion. Arran District Council has not taken a view on it. The answer to the question last week has been misinterpreted. Arran was not actively seeking at that stage. It needs representations to it, and I would encourage this town council, of which I'm a member, to request that action with full consultation, because the public clearly support it, visitors clearly support it, and we're talking, I think, about 4 or 5 food outlets there, and I think we need to talk and engage with the owners to make sure that they're on board before we take this forward. I think it'll be a huge positive boost to trade and traders and visitors coming to Littlehampton.
Thank you, Councillor. Dr. Walsh, much appreciated, and I personally totally agree with you. Moving on to item number 7 on the agenda, correspondence or issues in respect of district and county council.
There are none, Mr. Mayor.
Moving on to the next item, and I will hand over to the town clerk to take us through the report, which is item number 8, reports on committees non-exempt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll take these individually, if that's okay with you.
Yes.
The first one is actually covered elsewhere on the agenda, so that's regarding the budget, so we can pass over that because it comes up later, and that recommendation is included in that report. So the second one relates to a recommendation from the Property and Personnel Committee, which members may recall has been here once before to Council, was referred back to the Property and Personnel Committee, and is now a recommendation to declare Project 82 building surplus to requirements, and that authority be given to me to engage a district valuer and progress the sale of the premises. I just want to put on that there will be a decision taken to sell at some point in the future. Now, we will need to work out, and we will take back to Property and Personnel the mechanism for doing that. Obviously, the price is above the district valuer's recommendation, which will be confidential, and I will report back to Council. We can just progress it, but if we don't get those, we will need to come back to Council again. Just thought that was worth mentioning to members.
Thank you. Councillor Tandy wishes to speak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I'm grateful for the opportunity. I have raised some of these points before, but I think what's important to put it on record again is that whilst I'm very grateful for the further information, and it's been very helpful, particularly the figures on page 24, which provided the in-year budget, I have to go with what my gut feeling on this is, and I'm still not convinced that selling this building is going to achieve anything. I accept that it is a priority for the council and for what was the leading group on the council, and they have every right to do that, but I cannot sit here tonight and put my hand up and say that I think selling this is a good idea. There are various reasons, which I will not rehash because I've talked about them before. But the reason I bring it is simply some members will obviously be aware that West Sussex County Council have now launched a consultation or a proposal to shut all of the Find It Out services, which used to be in this building. For me, this building still has the potential. It needs investment, of course it does. But, you know, with the best will in the world, if you look at the budget tonight and some of the things we are finding money for, if we can find money for some of the things we're finding money for, I would be of the opinion that if we looked, we could find some money for this building. I accept that that is probably not the majority view, but I would feel uncomfortable not saying that. So I cannot vote for this, Mr. Mayor, and when it goes to the vote, I will be requesting a recorded vote, please.
Thank you, Councillor Tandy. I now have Councillor North East.
Just all these buttons you have to press now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support entirely what Freddie has said. I think this is a backward step in terms of providing community facilities in a part of the town that is in need of it. And I don't mean just a youth club or a community building. It needs to be tailored for the needs of people there and be a modern type facility. Now, I'm saddened because I was the mayor when this place was open back in 2000, and I was one that pushed for the extra reports, and I thank the clerk for these extra reports on some of the finances. Now, I was not at the meeting of the subcommittee, but I do have to say, Chairman, that these reports look a bit like on the back of a fag packet reports. They don't seem that strong to me. I mean, from my own point of view, as an electrician, I remember when that place was open and it had a full rewire. Now it's 20 years ago. There is no need to totally rewire it again. They might need a bit of upgrading. And I don't understand this thing, upgrade board, £5,000 to £8,000. I think that's a bit of a nonsense. That's somebody going in there that really doesn't know what they're talking about and just plucking a figure out the air. Yeah. And that just says to me that some of these other figures can be exactly the same, and we've ended up with a grossly exaggerated figure to do that place up. I mean, I would question the asbestos issue. I mean, I remember when we went in there and we did removal of asbestos, not only from there, but from the dairy when we provided it. So I don't know where this asbestos has suddenly come from, but it's been lived with for 20 years in there. The same as the roof. Does it need a total new roof? Or does it just need repairing? You know, as I said, this does look to me as though it's been done on the back of a fag packet, and it's not really relevant to the amount of work that needs to be done there. And that is why I can't support this. There is a need for it now. And if you look at the way everything is going, there's a big need for small community type facilities in areas to serve a certain purpose. And that may be an older youth drop-in centre, which was what it was originally for, which served a purpose. Because it was when they came out of the youth club, the only thing. Sorry, James, can you turn your mic off, please?
Oh, sorry, my apologies. I'm usually very good at that. My apologies.
Okay. The other set of figures as well, the figures that went to the subcommittee, financial implications, were budget figures. They weren't expenditure. And now I see in tonight, we've got the report tonight in front of us where it's got the expenditure figures, and it's £5,000 cheaper. And it will be cheaper than the budget figures because the place isn't being used. Now the 50 Up Club love that place, and it's something like that needs to be provided there now. And there's no reason why, with the right support another club like that could take it over and could be run by a charity, which would then mean that the rateable value would not have to be paid for. There are lots of things we can do, Mr. Chairman, and at this time we should not be looking at closing community facilities. As I said before, if you look where they are in the town at the moment, we've got facilities at Southfields, and that is about it. We've got nothing in the Wick area in terms of community facilities. The dairy's gone, so we got nothing in the town there, and the money was always meant that the dairy was bought as an asset that could be realised on, and we would build a better state-of-the-art community centre, but it hasn't happened. So we haven't got one there. Everything seems to be in one area. Now, I know there's talk of a new community facility coming on board in North Hampton, but that's a couple of years away yet. We're talking about dealing with problems and situations that there are now. And the dairy is there with a bit of TLC, and as Freddie said, there's money being spent on other things within the budget. There is no reason why this shouldn't be repaired properly and used properly and be an asset to the community once again. The reason it's in the state as it is because we've let it get in that state without doing the routine maintenance on it. And if the routine maintenance would have been done, we wouldn't be staring at such a big figure now. So I cannot support the selling of this building. It's unnecessary. It can be put to better use, and certainly it can be put to better use for the community to use it, which is what we will be looking for when lockdown finally ends. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor North East. I now have Councillor Dr. Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor. We're having a lot of emotional arguments. This has been through the council and its committees twice now, and the recommendation remains unchanged. And it's unoccupied. Nobody's actually using it at the moment. There is no apparent demand for it. And we do have, it's not talk of, a new community centre. We have a brand sparkling new community centre coming on in North Littlehampton within the next 2 years. And that's going to be the community facility for North Littlehampton. We also have the Keystone Centre, which is principally a youth club, but is still it's still a community facility, not very far away in Wick as well. So I cannot support throwing good money after bad, which is what we're talking about here. It will be throwing public taxpayers' money to actually pay for some nostalgia. This is actually not a used community facility. What we ought to be looking for is quality new community facilities, which is what we're getting in North Littlehampton, and the new quality facility of the Keystone Centre, just as we've got at Southfields. And let's stop throwing good money after bad. And it's unfair to criticise officers and say this is back of a fag packet assessment. These are professionals who we pay and respect to produce costings for us, estimated costings for us, for the realistic cost of bringing this back up to date. And it is just not cost effective to do so. Let's get on with this, take the decision tonight and move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dr. Walsh. I do not have anyone else to speak, so I do believe we move to a recorded vote. Peter?
So can I just sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, can I just clarify 3 things, because Councillor North East raised 2 of them, 3 of them.
Guys?
The asbestos was found in the surveys that we did when the regulations came in, and it's just the fact it's there. I just, you know, it wasn't when it was purchased. Is when we undertook all the asbestos surveys for the dairy, for the manor house, and for the Project 82. The dairy sale went to, I think there's still some money left from it if you portion it properly, but a lot of it went to Southfields, which is a new community centre, which in many ways has replaced the role of the dairy. The estimates are, I mean, they're not back of a fag packet. They are where we've gone to contractors and spoken to potential contractors, but we have not asked for full-blown tenders, and we have because we were asking people. We would not been able to get people to tender for work that wasn't going to go ahead, and we haven't paid consultants to do it either because we hadn't had a budget to do so. So we used, if you want, friendly contractors who were prepared to give us some estimates, and it was purely estimates. And Councillor North East is right; they are only estimates. They're not absolutely priced, absolutely qualified tenders in any shape or form. So I just wanted as clarification, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Peter. So yeah, now I think we'll move on to the recorded vote, please.
So, so just bear with me one moment. So there's one recommendation which is set out at the bottom of that paragraph. And so you're either for, against or abstaining councillors. I will go through the list and it will be noted and recorded in the minutes which way you vote. So I'm going to start even with the person who's probably isn't here just to check that she hasn't reappeared. Councillor Baker. It's still not here. Councillor Blanchard Cooper.
For.
Councillor Buckland. Councillor Buckland. I'll move on. Councillor Chase.
For.
Councillor Long.
For.
Councillor Monoy.
For.
Councillor North East.
Against.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, Peter.
I'll come back to you. Okay, Councillor Buckland. For.
Against.
Against.
Thank you.
Councillor Price.
For.
Councillor Rhodes.
For.
Councillor Seeks.
For.
Councillor Tandy.
Against.
Councillor Turner.
For.
And Councillor Dr. Walsh.
For.
And so that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's carried by 9 votes to 3, and we will record that in the minutes, Mr. Mayor. Let's move on to the next one.
Yes, please.
The next one relates to committee meeting dates. We are somewhat, in saying this, in the hands of the government as to how meetings in the future will proceed in terms of primary legislation being required for continuation of virtual meetings and so on. However, what we have here is a 2 or 3 part proposal. The first is the dates for the next year, seeing us through to 2022. The second relates to the annual town meeting. Members will recall that we held off the annual town meeting and we were looking to hold it in March. That's not going to happen. There's no way that we can hold a mass gathering in March. So the first part of that is to try and just to accept that the 2020 annual town meeting just will not be. The second element of that is, what do we do about the 2021 annual town meeting? It is possible that this may be able to be held within the legislative time frame of the end of June. So we've put a date in for the last week of June. I'd say it's still doubtful, but if the law enables us not to hold it, we may have to look later in the year for that. But again, I'm happy to answer any questions on that. The last element of this is about the Town Merit Awards. We've got a number of nominations hanging over from earlier last year to go to the annual town meeting. What we need to do potentially, if members are happy, is to combine those with another consultation, public engagement on this, because obviously there may be many more people who come forward, particularly given the climate we've been living in the last 12 months. So that's the brief summary, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to answer any questions, and then there is a recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. I have Councillor North East.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased that we're keeping August fairly light, like most other authorities. That it's a holiday month. One thing I would like to move, Mr. Chairman, is I'd like to move that the December meeting of Policy and Finance, which is on the 20th in 21 and on the 19th in 22, that is actually moved to the week before, even move it to the Tuesday. It really wouldn't matter. I know historically it's always been on a Monday, but I'd like to see that moved to the week before, purely and simply because this last Christmas that we've had, people haven't had a chance to go away or meet family or all that sort of thing. And this coming Christmas, I think people will be more inclined to take a longer break and go away and see families. And I think it would be good to keep that week before Christmas free rather than have a meeting in it, especially a meeting as important as Policy and Finance. So I'd just like to move, Mr. Chairman, that the Policy and Finance Committee meeting is moved to the 14th in 21 and the 13th in 22.
Could I clarify why that gap is there at the moment, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
The reason is that it's purely around the budget. So what there is the capacity for each of the service committees, in effect, to consider their budget and make a recommendation to Policy and Finance. So whilst I think the points that Councillor North East makes are absolutely valid, the knock-on impact of that really is to take the rest of the committee cycle back 1 week.
Why?
The reason, well, because
there's absolutely no need to do that. I'm just talking about moving one meeting. Why are you making it so complicated? It doesn't need to be done like that.
The standing orders of the council, the financial regulations, are that the recommendations of the committees on their budgets go to Policy and Finance, who then recommend to council. So on this reckoning, Property and Personnel, which is the main one, in fact, both of the Property and Personnel and Community and Resources would both be meeting after the council's budget has been circulated to members. So those members would not have a chance to consider what has happened at the other two committees. So for instance, if there's changes, if the Community Resources Committee wished to do more events or something like that, they wouldn't be in the paperwork that was going to Policy and Finance. So that's the logic of it. I mean, the other two, I'm just looking at the dates, and Planning and Transportation is a very minimal budget, and probably could be picked up at the last minute. But CRC and Property and Personnel would need to go back to being more than a week before PNF. I'm not saying don't move PNF, but it would mean, I think, moving PNP and CRC and probably Planning and Transportation, because they'd be on the same night as PNP.
Okay, thank you for that, Peter. I now have Councillor Emily Seeks.
Thank you. I'm waiting for the red circle. Oh, there we go. I was going to raise it at a later point, but we've mentioned the sort of recognition of people who sort of have done outstanding work in the community. I was going to suggest that it seems increasingly unlikely that we'll be able to do any events again this summer. We've heard today that Glastonbury's cancelled for this summer again. I was going to suggest that we did an autumn sort of key workers event so that we could celebrate all of the people that have done something for the community, because we're not going to be able to do other things. And if we do it in September, there's a better chance of us actually being able to do that, as we'll be further along and we can still hold it outside. So I do think we should try and get something in to recognise those people, even if it's an outside event, and get those nominations in.
Thank you, Councillor Seeks. I now have Councillor Dr. Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on the side issue that Councillor Seeks has just mentioned, I'd strongly support that, but that's not up for discussion at the moment. I would support having that sort of event in September, and I think we could build that in, not with a decision tonight, but through the normal committee structure over the next week or 2 or 3. I wanted to address the question that Mike, Councillor North East, has mentioned. People who take Christmas holidays don't normally take them before Christmas. Most people work up to Christmas Eve, and then there is a shutdown of most businesses and shops, council offices and everything for a 10-day period starting this year. It started on the day before Christmas Eve, but normally it starts including Christmas Eve. So I would be opposed to actually effectively trying to extend the Littlehampton Town Council Christmas holiday period up to a 3-week period. We already have the shutdown observed by the West Sussex County Council, the Arran District Council and ourselves and every other public body from Christmas Eve through to a day or so after New Year. That is a long shutdown for people to be able to go away, which I hope people will be able to take advantage of this time next year, or in a year's time. I very much hope that. I don't think that by pushing it back a week, which has a knock-on effect, as the town clerk has said, not just on P&F, but on at least 2 other committees, and it could also clash with the diary of Arran District Council, and we've got dual-hatted members. I haven't got that in front of me because I wasn't expecting this. These diaries have been carefully put together by the committee clerks at the Town Council and at Arran District Council so that we don't get these clashes, and there is a danger of clashes being built in. So I think we should stick with the timetable that we've got, which still gives members a 10-day, virtually 2-week holiday from Christmas Eve onwards. I think to try and extend it back a week before Christmas, which is one of the busiest for shopkeepers and everybody else who are trying to get business going and the town going, etc. next Christmas, would be the wrong signal to the public. Town council shuts down a week before Christmas is not a good signal to give.
Thank you, Councillor Dr. Walsh. I don't have any more questions, so I shall hand back to the town clerk.
So you have a proposal from Councillor North East, which to move the Policy and Finance Committee. I don't know whether Councillor North East wants to add to that and to make the other changes required to meet standing orders.
On a point of order, Chairman, has that been seconded?
That was going to be my next question.
I think it was, Peter.
But I need to clarify what it is that we're what's being proposed. So I don't know if Councillor North East was just proposing moving Policy and Finance, or because we would need to move the others in line with standing orders.
Yes, of course, and I've got no problem with doing that. I've just looked through we had nothing for the district council in that week last year. It was only the town council. In fact, we had nothing for the district council the week before that as well. So I don't see what the problem is just moving it to accommodate that week. I was just giving people the flexibility, because not everybody does what Councillor Walsh says, and that is take the week afterwards. There are people that do take the week before and use it for doing their Christmas shopping or whatever. So I was merely trying to move something there that, as an authority, we leave that week free for people. But if you don't want to do it, you don't want to do it. I haven't got a seconder unless anybody wants to put their hand up and second me. So it falls, doesn't it?
If there's no seconder, then we move on to the recommendation.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor.
Yep, please do, Peter.
So the recommendation is as set out, which I'll now have to nip back to. Sorry, bear with me. I've completely lost my pages there. Trying to find the. So the recommendation is yes to the draft calendar of committees and council meetings for 2021 and 22 be approved and recommended to. Be approved, and the proposals to the annual town meeting and merit awards also be approved. They're the recommendations. Don't know if you want to do that on general assent or want me to read out the list.
I think general assent will be fine, Peter.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes, I'm happy with it.
Fine by me.
Yeah, and me.
And me.
Noted, Councillor North East. Is there anyone else apart from Councillor North East opposed?
No.
Okay, we'll take that as approved then. And back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on to item 8.2 of committee meetings, I can now hand over to Councillor Dr. Walsh as Chair of Policy and Finance to present these minutes.
Mr. Mayor, we seem to have lost Councillor Walsh for the minutes.
Yeah, he seems to have frozen.
Would you like me to present them and try and or the vice chair?
Either, Peter, if you're happy to, I'm very happy with that.
Well, I'll ask Councillor Long first.
Okay, whichever you two are happy with.
Thank you. I'm happy to present them, but I don't have the right form of words in front of me to say so. If that's acceptable, I'm happy to present the minutes of the Policy and Finance Committee meeting held on the 21st of December. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Jurlong. Do we have any questions? Yes, I have Councillor Emily Sinks.
It's just on the community wardens again. I went back and had a look at the meeting where this was signed off in June, and there wasn't a recommendation or a vote on it, or indeed a report or a value attached to it. So I'm still feeling like we don't have enough information on that. We've only had a sort of one-page summary document on that. I'm not saying it must be a bad idea, but I would still welcome the information for that, even post decision being made. I've been told it's based on Horsham and they've had great success, but that's it. So I'd like to actually see what that great success is, because I think there's some confusion, because we've sort of, as we said before, there's the two options. There's the security guys who have cuffing licenses and are in the town centre doing that sort of thing and on shop watch radios, or there's a sort of community intervention that's doing more of the sort of working with people and, you know, a softer approach. And if that's what we've gone for, that's fine, but I'd like to know what that actually entails.
Thank you.
Can I help on this one?
Yes, please, Peter.
I mean, I'm happy to sort of supply Councillor Seeks with details of the Horsham scheme if that would provide her with what she requires. I'm hoping that, I suppose I'm slightly balking at the portrayal as sort of more touchy-feely than they will be uniformed. They will be, I hope, very much at the cutting edge of the issues that the community has as a whole, be it the drugs and social behaviour, criminal events, and they'll be able to be flexible enough to operate at all times of the day and the week. The town centre is one area that they will be working, as was sort of covered earlier in the question, but I think the key areas will be those areas right out where people live, where people play, such as parks, where people live. And I was talking to someone earlier today, and they asked me what sort of percentage of time would you expect of their time would you expect them to be working in different parts of the town. And I mean, obviously they will move to wherever their need is greatest, but I would anticipate they will spend more time in the Wick area than they would in the town centre. I would anticipate that during seasonal things such as seafront and such as the seafront and the parks and things might be more where some of them their resources would be focused. But I'm more than happy. I'll get you some more information on the Horsham scheme, Councillor Six.
Thank you.
I don't have any more questions on those, so I shall now move on to number 2, where I can hand over to Councillor Blanchard Cooper as Chair of the Community Resources Committee to present these minutes.
Can I apologise? My internet dropped out just at the crucial moment when I was asked to present the minutes, so I missed the first minute of that, so I apologise. I'm back now.
Thank you. Councillor Blanchard Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to present the minutes of the meeting of the Community Resources meeting held on the 10th of December 2020, which seems a very long time ago now, on pages 37 to 45, and I'm happy to attempt to answer any questions. Let's have a go.
Nope, I don't see anyone. Yes, I have Councillor Emily Seeks.
Sorry, I was typing too slowly.
Just put the Q.
Okay. It was just on the artwork installation. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend, and so I wasn't there. It's been deferred. Obviously, we were trying to get it so that we had something for this summer season, because having the big wheel is not guaranteed again, and that gave the town a boost and gave us something for people to be posting about on social media and a reason to visit. And we were looking for something else that we actually initiated this year to get people moving and to use Pier Road and to spread out a bit, because we had discussions about the sort of intensity of people in that first few bays, because visitors don't realise there are toilets at sort of 2 other locations along the beach. So the idea was to support business, which we need, to spread people out for safety, which we need, and it's been deferred. So it won't be ready now for this summer, and it's not included in the budget. So I'm just concerned and would ask that we possibly reconsider deferring this, because the reason was that we might have a new Little Hampton Town Council logo. I don't think there's any need to stick a logo on it to be able to progress this and get the sort of results that this project was supposed to deliver.
Can I helpfully answer that?
Yes,
Mr. Mayor, unless you want to.
No, certainly, Peter.
The council's priorities will be going to community resources in this case, and other service committees, policy and finance, and property and personnel in the next cycle, to review whether some of them still need to proceed, whether others shouldn't, their urgency, etc. The signage that Councillor Seeks talks about will be in that list and will be discussed then. So I will also, I think members will see in the minutes, I've got to undertake a survey of members to try and glean exactly what it is that they're looking at, and that will be fed in as well to that meeting. So the CRC's got 2 meetings during the next cycle, but all those priorities will then come back to council in March.
Okay, thank you.
If I may just come back on that, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, please do, Councillor Blanchard Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All I wanted to just add was just for clarification for anyone who's possibly watching. Councillor Seats referred to this as the artwork project. Just for clarification, it's item 44.5, which is the visitor mat. I wouldn't want anyone thinking it was another similar project to the High Street art project. So I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I will now move on to number 3. I will hand over to Councillor Tandy as Chair of the Planning and Transportation Committee to present these minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am pleased to present the minute of the meetings of the Planning and Transportation Committee that were held on the 7th of December 2020 and the 4th of January 2021, as set out on pages 46 to 59, and would happily answer any questions.
And surprisingly enough, we have none. So item number four, as Chair of the Property and Personnel Committee, I am pleased to present these minutes of a meeting held on the 14th of December 2020, as set out on pages 60 to 64 in the papers, and I would be happy to answer any questions relating to them. And I have none, so moving on very quickly, I will now hand over to Councillor Tandy as Chair of the Community Centre Subcommittee to present these minutes.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to present the minutes of the meeting of the Community Centre Subcommittee held on the 3rd of December 2020, as set out on pages 65 to 67 in the papers, and will be happy to answer any questions relating to them. I will point out that, as stated on the agenda, I would like to draw members' attention that the subcommittee is due to meet again very soon, with the aim of drawing up recommendations for consideration at an extraordinary council meeting in February.
Councillor North East.
Thank you, Chairman. I am more than a little bit disappointed with this, because it was only a couple of months ago we went big on the design of this and actually did a page spread on it in progress, telling people this was the design of the new building and that's the new facility that was going to be up there. And here we are a few weeks later saying that is not deliverable. There's one thing I would like to ask, and is that the way this is worded, this report, does worry me quite a lot, because it doesn't mention how much over budget it was, or how much we're looking for to make up that budget. It just says things like sizable. So that does concern me. So is it possible for us to know how much is over budget?
Yes, we were made fully aware of that, Councillor North East.
Yeah. I'm not totally against it being a single-storey building. I think if you go back and look at some of the input that the Keystone Management Committee had, the one now, and also some of the users there, certainly Arran Community Church, pointed to the issue that if you have a two-storey building, when you've got kids in there, it's quite difficult to control and police, if you like. So the two-storey aspect doesn't really bother us, apart from the fact that you need to have the facilities then on the ground floor, and you need to have adequate facilities, or better facilities, because that's what we've always said was going to happen, than what we've got at the moment. And basically that boils down to a large sports hall type, and then two small meeting rooms, an office, a lounge, a kitchen. But also with this is improved outside facilities. Now, I read in this report as well that the district council are going to be responsible for the outside facilities, but I'd like to think we have some sort of input in that to say what type of outside facilities that we want there, or what the kids will be looking for there. With regards to materials, whenever a building is constructed, there's always wriggle room within materials. There is to make savings. But what I don't want to see is when we're putting in words then like the building will be of a reasonable standard. You know, that's they're the wrong words, because we've gone from it being a quality facility to one of a reasonable standard now. The other thing I'd just like to flag up, I had an email from a constituent this week who's backing on to the new facility in Eldon Way, and she's asked about the fencing there. Now, this is something that I raised at the design stage, that we shouldn't be relying on people's own fences, because not all the properties there are council properties. A lot of them are owner occupied, and those fences belong to the owners. And we should not be putting in a facility like that. We should not be relying on their fence to be the boundary fence. We should be putting in a fence as well, and something perhaps of a standard that's acoustic, which does take some of the noise away, especially if there's going to be an outside kickabout facility and perhaps other things, a basketball court and whatever. So I'd like to see that on the agenda, and I think Peter has agreed that that will go on the agenda of the next subcommittee meeting. But yes, I think what I'm saying is I am disappointed that we're now having to look for quite, well, and I don't know what they are, sizable savings in order to go ahead with this facility. But I'm glad to see we might be bringing it back round to more of a youth club than a community hall. I think that's all I've got at this moment, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor North East. Is there anything you wanted to add, Peter, or will you do it later?
I was wondering whether Councillor Tandy did first.
Sorry, Councillor Tandy.
All I would say is I'll start with the easiest issue, the fence we will pick up at the next subcommittee quite happily. I will leave the town clerk to discuss the issues of finance and other things, which I'm acutely aware. We're in non-exempt, so I'm staying quiet. Okay.
In very, very simple terms, I mean, I'm not going to do figures. I'm not going to reveal, because they are only consultants, our own consultants, in effect, estimates as to viability. What you will have as a council when we meet as an extraordinary meeting is all the information you've just been talking about, Councillor North East, and other members need. You will then be confronted, I would assume, with some choices. And those choices are yours. I mean, whether you stay within the, you as council gave a very strict, you will not go over this budget statement when they agreed to move on with this project. If our consultants come back and say, you will go over that if you deliver this, we need to look at whether we can engineer some savings. We will then come back to you. And so the meeting in February, will be your opportunity to get into all of those bits and pieces. Some of it will definitely be an exempt, because what we do not want to do is prejudice our own tender arrangements. So whilst we can do a summary for the public, we will need to have a lot of that discussion in exempt. But at the moment, the subcommittee is doing that piece of work, which is why you set it up at the last council meeting.
Thank you, Peter. Very quickly, Councillor Mike North East, please.
Yes, I think. Thank you, Chairman. One of the reasons I asked about it was because it's easy to say we haven't got that money, so we'll make cuts in the building. But is it possible that there will be other grants available that we could call on, even with Sport England or somebody like that, that could be making up the shortfall? But not knowing what the shortfall is, then it's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I'd just like to think that we were looking towards other grants rather than just going down the cutbacks route.
I think that's something you could discuss with the chair, and then maybe he could discuss it with the town clerk, Councillor North East. So I should quickly move on to Councillor Andrea Turner, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was about to suggest that instead of using making up less quality and keeping it as a quality building, that it would be an ideal opportunity to put the money that comes from the sale of Project 82 towards the community youth club. That would be benefiting the whole community there. But you know, if we're going to be selling Project 82, then that money could be put towards the new facility. It's just an idea. Thank you.
And through you, Mr. Mayor,
please do.
All those options will be there for members to do. But at the moment, we are on a strict budget that Council has set us, and we cannot go beyond that.
Thank you. I shall now move on to Councillor Buckland, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I totally concur with Councillor North East on the fencing scenario. I wasn't going to say anything because he covered it, and then so did Councillor Tandy. But as you know, it's come up. It's a case of that. Yes, I totally concur that we do need to look at the fencing and possibly acoustic. The only issue that I would raise with it is that as some of the properties, as Councillor North East has quite rightly said, are owner occupied, others are actual council. Maybe we should be talking to Arran District Council along with that for the fencing. However, my concern is how high, if it was acoustic, would we go? Because obviously, yes, it is a technical issue. It would be the case of that we don't want to be shading or making people's gardens darker. So maybe it would be a certain size acoustic, if possible, with similar to wire mesh above, to obviously, if they were out there playing ball, that the balls don't go in their garden. But we all know that some children do have this habit of trying to kick the balls higher than ever. So, but just along them lines, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Buckland. I do not have any more speakers, so I shall now move on to item number 9 on the agenda, which is officers' reports. Please turn to page 68 in your agenda, and I would ask the town clerk to take us through these reports.
And hopefully this urgent item is non-contentious, Mr. Mayor, which is the appointment of Councillor Tandy to the Property and Personnel Committee, outside of the normal council cycle.
I personally am very happy with that. I have Councillor Emily Seeks.
Hello, I have no objection at all, obviously. Only one question. I've been asking for probably a solid 2 months about joining policy and finance, and was told it was completely impossible until we come to look at committees again in May. So if it is possible to be on policy and finance, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
The significant difference, Councillor Seeks, and we will be doing all committee appointments, whatever happens in May, and I will be taking a report through governance and audits and policy and finance through to the next council meeting about how that may or may not go ahead, up to members. The crucial issue was that there was no Labour group representation on the Property and Personnel Committee as a result of the sad loss of Councillor Squires, and therefore, whereas on all of the other committees there was cross-party representation. That was the urgency in that factor.
I will keep waiting then for the lucky day that I get to go to a policy and finance meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Seeks. I now have Councillor Dr. Walsh.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I have no objection. In fact, I welcome Freddie Tandy to the Policy Finance Committee. It's just I've just noticed on the previous one where it talks about him on the Community Centres Subcommittee, the minute actually says he was elected to be chair of the Standards Subcommittee. He wasn't elected to be chair of the Standards Subcommittee. It's on page 65. He's elected to be chair of that subcommittee.
Thank you for pointing that out. We'll correct that when it goes to the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any more questions on that one, so I take it we have general assent on that.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, agreed.
It is for notice, yeah.
Thank you. 9.2, Little Hampton Harbour Advisory Board, and I'll hand over to Town Clerk to summarise.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We members will be hopefully have read about this body that's been set up to. It's not the Harbour Board, I hasten to add. It's an advisory group. The Harbour Board meets tomorrow, I believe, or the subcommittee that deals with it, one or the other, and we'll be seeking to receive nominations from any outside bodies to approve them. So the decision is needed tonight. Obviously, we'll be reviewing all these things when we make our appointments to outside bodies back over in May. But in the meantime, I'm aware that Councillor Buckland has put his name forward. I'm not sure if there are any others.
No one's typing very quickly, Peter, so I'll take that as a no.
So in that case, is it the council's wish that Councillor Buckland be their representative on this group?
Yes.
It is mine.
Agreed.
Yes, agreed.
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, if that's general assent, Mr. Mayor, I'll put that nomination to the Harbour Board tomorrow.
Thank you. Moving on to item under number 10 on the agenda, notice of a motion. Members have set out before them on page 5 of the agenda 2 notices of a motion proposed by Councillor Seeks. Therefore, before we begin, can I remind members of the need to follow the rules of debate, which have also been circulated with your agenda papers. Councillor Seeks will address the council, and then I will open up for discussion for members to debate. I will now ask Councillor Seeks to address council on her proposals.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, can I just clarify one thing? Before you open it to debate, it will need to be seconded.
Thank you, Peter.
I'll second it.
Okay. So I'm only going to talk to point 1 and Michelle will be delivering point 2. We need to thoroughly scrutinise spend. We should be considered and plan our spend carefully. By having a checks and balances approach to sign off of spend over 10,000, we can ensure the best outcomes on residents' money and all take responsibility for those large ticket items. We recently had 90,000 signed off by the Policy and Finance Committee. I have looked at the recording and the papers for that meeting. There was no report, no questions, no value attached to the item on the agenda. On the Town Council's own website, it states, and I quote, "Matters delegated to this committee are development of policy for recommendation to Council." I believe this is what should be happening with big ticket items and initiatives. I kindly ask that you support this motion. And my seconder was Michelle, but I think Joe's jumped in.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? Councillor Blanchard Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just looking at this, the only concern I've really got is around the wording. All expenditure over £10,000 should require sign-off by full council. A committee may discuss and vote upon items for recommendation to full council, but final sign-off should happen at full council to allow for full scrutiny of the decision. My slight concerns is, will this effectively cause disruption in as much as will we just need to be having a full council meeting every month, because there are certain time constraints that monies need to be agreed by. So that's one of my points, and I think Peter might be able to answer that. How is £10,000 defined? Because if it's, for example, one of the events, if that event costs £12,000 to put on, but several items cost £4,000 each, are we saying that because it's collectively over 10,000, does that need to come back here? I'm sorry to say, I think this motion is very, very loose at the moment and needs a lot of work done on it to tighten it up, because at the moment, I think that there's a lot there that actually isn't very clear, and I'm not sure how it will actually work within the procedures of the council and within the time constraints and within the officers needing to be able to get things done. I'm happy for scrutiny. I'm happy for making sure that we do have things in place to protect. I'm just very concerned that the actual wording of this motion is not clear and doesn't actually give the council room to work, but I'm happy to be led on that. Thank you.
Did you, Mr. Mayor, did you want me to?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
You're muted, Peter.
I do apologise. I share Councillor Blanchard Cooper's concerns only in terms of what is actually meant by it. And I'm not trying to be cryptic, but all expenditure over £10,000. I've looked back at the expenditure that we made over £10,000 last year, which is on the website anyway, because all of our expenditure over £500 is on the website. Every month there would be a payment to West Sussex for the pensions. Every month there would be a payment to HMRC. Regularly there would be payments to Aaron Church as part of their contract with us. Regularly there would be payments to the Public Works Loans Board. Some of these we're actually contractually bound to make on top, such as, pensions, etc. Aaron Church, we've already made the decision to pay these, but if as stated, that says that all of those should go to council. So I think I'm trying to pick up from what Councillor Seeks said. I think she's trying, question, not I think, are you trying to pick up on new expenditure over £10,000? Because if that's the case, I think that needs to be incorporated in it, because I'm not sure what council's going to discuss if it comes to paying the rates for our buildings, because that will be over £10,000 and we have to pay it. So I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just suggesting that there needs to be clarity on that.
Would you like me to come back? Or wait till everybody's got their questions out and then I'll sort of summarise at the end?
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful, Councillor Seeks, if we just let everyone go and you can summarise and change anything you might wish to, if you wish to. But yeah, we get a general clarification from everyone. So next I have Councillor Joe Price.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in support of Emily's
motion proposal. I do think with what Peter's just said, maybe some of the wording does need to be changed, and potentially it is on new expenditure. You know, as councillors, we accept that your HMRC bill is probably going to be that, and other expenditure will be obviously along the lines of more than that. I just want to sort of bring up the example of the street art. You know, if that had come back to full council, potentially we wouldn't have paid the price that we did, because it was over the 10,000 for the stickers that have caused, you know, bad press, that haven't been great. You know, I don't want to go into debate about it because we've debated that enough, but I just obviously wanted to use that as an example, that if it had gone back to full council, then potentially more people would have maybe scrutinised it. And I think that's what Emily is trying to put in place, that we don't make potentially any more, we're all involved in decisions to do with new expenditure. Thank you.
Thank you. I now have Councillor Michelle Monoy.
Hello. I just want to say I'm in support of this motion as well. And the way that I read it, probably because I've spoken to Emily about it as well, is that this wouldn't be money that is used for the general running costs or overheads of the council. This will be money that is in committee pots, so committee budget money, as in events, projects, initiatives and stuff like that. And I read it as any initiative that has collectively got an amount in it over £10,000. So if you say, OK, we spent £400 on this person doing music and £200 on the face painter, but collectively that event, everything for that pot, if it comes to over £10,000, should go to full council. Thank you.
Thank you. I now have Councillor Mike North East, and then I'll come back to Councillor Emily Seeks.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can totally see where Emily's coming from on this, but I don't think the wording in the motion is helping, and it does need to be reworded, because as has just been pointed out, you know what you meant talking between the two of you. But what's here tonight for people to vote on is not that. So it does need rewording, and I'd perhaps ask that, is this the time to do that, or do you want to go away, reword it, and come back again with your motion? Because I think it's going to be quite intense of what you've got to put in there, of how the council is going to be restricted. The other thing is, as Billy pointed out, is that it could end up that we're meeting every month or every other week, just as a full council, because we need to get expenditure through. So I think all those things need to be looked at, and then perhaps I'd be more inclined to support the motion. But at the moment, it is too open-ended, and it doesn't explain a lot. So at this time, I can't support it as it is.
Thank you, Councillor North East. Did you want to come back quickly, Emily, or would you like me to go through the others?
Shall I do a few now, because it might answer further questions that we have? I'm not precious about the wording, and I'll happily insert new into that. I think when we sign off things like the running of the council, we expect to have regular payments that go out, so the staff bill will be the same. So I think, as with all rules and rules in constitutions, there's an acceptance of the spirit of the rules. So when there's a requirement of a certain value requires free tenders, we don't then break that down to sneak through having to not go out and go through that process. So I think it doesn't have to be sort of able to stand up to legal sort of scrutinising of that. So the idea is that it's new items that come through committees over 10k should then go to full council for sign off. And I would also say, with the argument that it will cause delays, we should be operating in such a forensic and planned manner that it can fit in with the current cycle. You know, we have priorities meetings and we know what we need to do for the coming year. There shouldn't be something that comes up where we suddenly say we want to spend 30k on an augmented reality app and we can't wait until the next full council in 2 months' time to sign that off because that augmented reality app is an urgent item. So I just don't believe there's that many times when something is urgent over 10k, and we should be acting in such a measured and calculated and planned way that this should not stop the business of the council as usual. So that's all I had so far on the comments, but if anybody has a suggestion, I don't want to wait and take this away again, because I think that all we need to do is accept the sort of spirit of the wording, insert new projects and initiatives to the wording, and that answers that question, I believe.
Yeah, okay, I should go back to the other questions now, Councillor Seeks, and maybe while we're going through that, if you want to consider your wording, that'd be good. I now have Councillor Buckland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, as Emily would say, in the spirit of it, I concur with everything that Councillor Northeast has said. And also in reference to Councillor Blanchard Cooper. However, there are quite, you know, there's flaws in it, and Emily has just actually sort of like basically scientifically exposed that in the case of that we should be working more clinically. And yeah, well, I don't think we do need to have more meetings every month or anything like that. So I would be happy to support the motion on the grounds of that there is new wording put in. I think it's a necessary motion, and that basically at the end of the day, we all know in reference to like the town shows or Armed Forces Day and things like that that we've all done and seen in the past. We all know that certain budgets are extended or whichever, but as Emily has actually stated, this is for new applications coming through, i.e. as Councillor Price has turned around and said, a little bit like the stickers that has caused us no amounts of problems. You know, yes, you can blame me for, you know, being Riverwald councillor for not reading every single paper that comes through my door, and not standing up and saying, no, I don't agree with spending that type of money on what was done in the town centre. Yes, you can hold my hands up to that. But at the end of the day, I had nothing to do with it. But I totally agree that we should be scrutinising new ventures in the amounts of money that we're spending. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Buckland. I now have Councillor Dr. Walsh. Thank you,
Mr. Mayor. I, in principle, support what Emily is trying to do, but as has been pointed out, the wording is not clear enough. And particularly with financial regulations in any public body, we need to be absolutely critically clear on the wording. And I don't think that making up, changing wording in a full council meeting is the right way to do it. We have a process for dealing with it. It's called the Governance and Audit Subcommittee. It meets, I think, on the 9th or 6th of February, very soon. And what I would suggest is that we do not take a vote on this tonight and try and amend it on the hoof, because that always ends up with bad policy statement, that we actually take this very quickly to Governance Audit on the 9th of February, ask for the input from the town clerk and from Laura. I think it's very important that our responsible financial officer also has an input into how this complies with our existing written regulations, etc., to make sure that we get it correct and watertight, and then it can come back with a final recommendation to the next full council after the February Governance and Audit. It's not making a meal of it, it's just making sure that we get it right rather than trying. I've been around for too long to see that financial regulations that you try and amend at a full council meeting end up getting it wrong and having to come back again to be corrected at some stage quite quickly afterwards. So that's what I would propose, that we remit this to Government Audits on the audit on the 9th of February and then to the next full council for the final decision.
If it simplifies things, then, sorry, Dave, if it's okay, as the person that moved the motion, can I say that I'll defer it to that committee to be worded and brought back? And then we don't have to have more questions and debate. We can just let that committee debate the exact wording because they understand the spirit of what we're trying to achieve here. And then we'll bring it back next time after it's been through that process.
Chairman, just quickly, can I just say, as chair of that committee, I'm happy for that to take place and invite you along, Emily, to put it forward at the meeting.
Lovely, thank you.
Sounds.
So you're totally happy with that, Peter?
Yeah. So if members as general said as to that first motion, more than happy. And on the second one, can I just address the second one very quickly because it might help council. I don't think there's a problem with the second one. I think it should just go through the governance and audit and be picked up at the same time. But I'm quite happy to do it in the interim anyway.
Yep.
So I think it could get picked up in the way that we report things and in our standing orders. But I'm happy to pick, if members would like that. I think it's good practice anyway, and I'm happy to pick it up.
Agreed.
Can we just check with Michelle because it was her motion? The first one was mine, so I would like to give Michelle the chance to.
Okay, that's fine. So are you saying that you want the second part to go through the other committee as well?
I'm saying that I'll do it in the interim anyway, but it can go through the governance and audit committee just a bit and back to council just to firm it off.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
You just include it as part of the report, Peter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just ask one thing?
Sorry, just through you, Mr. Mayor, because I'm picking up the thing. It's the report and minutes. So the minutes will have at the end of it a cost.
Correct.
Yep.
So members, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, are members happy with that referral to governance and audit for both motions? Although I will pick up the second one and run with it anyway.
Yeah.
Yep. Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you.
Yes.
Very happy and well done to both for actually putting those items forward, but considering it.
Yes, congratulations, girls.
Thank you.
Did I just hear what I heard?
Right, sorry, I lost my way a little bit there because it came to an abrupt halt. Now move on to item number 11, finance. Please turn to page 73 in your agenda papers, and I will ask the town clerk to take us through the first report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is largely untouched. In fact, pretty much is untouched from when it went to policy and finance. So I'm not proposing to give you a long preamble to it. It is an important element that then will feed into the next item.
May I just speak very briefly? I'm sorry I haven't typed a message.
Certainly, Councillor Dr. Walsh.
Thank you very much. This is the capital programme, and it contains a very significant expenditure for the town of Littlehampton, and I'm really delighted that it's here. Just to very briefly pick out the main items, there's the Beach Road public realm enhancement, which I remind members is nearly £3.5 million of government money with some input from ourselves. There's the Rosemead playground, which is in there as well. The very significant new Keystone Centre, which we've talked about, and which we will bottom out, and it will be built. There will have to be some negotiations over the precise funding and the details of that design, but there's a will, there's a way, and we will get that done. And we're all agreed that that's going to go forward and will be a significant development. Then there's the new North Little Hampton Community Centre, which again is going to have a contribution of the developer of £1.5 million, and we may have to top that up a little bit. So all in all, it's a very significant list that can be afforded out of our earmarked reserves and developer contributions, and I commend it most heartily to the council.
Thank you, Councillor Dr. Walsh. I now have Councillor Andrea Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to say how lovely Rosemary Park looks. It obviously will look better in the spring when we've got no mud. But I'm delighted to see that it's open, and I did actually sneak down when it was opened. But I would like to ask about the public realm, about when there's going to be the announcement about the contractors.
If I can help very quickly, the contractors have been chosen. I'm a little bit surprised that Aaron hasn't actually released that out, because I thought it was now, because there was a statutory period after they've been chosen that you have to wait in case any other contractors complain about how the tendering process was finished up. That hasn't happened, so the contractors have been named. They are engaged in the work, and I'm surprised that hasn't actually been released. I'll make sure that it is from Aaron tomorrow.
I think, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that all they're waiting for, there isn't a problem. They're waiting for the contract to be signed.
Oh, thank you, Peter.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. I don't have any more questions, so I shall now move on to item 11.2.
There's a recommendation, Chairman. It's important.
Do apologise. Do apologise. I should hand over to Peter.
Oh, sorry. The recommendations are set out at the bottom of page, and I'm trying to.
Page 73.
73. I don't need to read them. They are there. Is there general assent?
Agreed.
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 Yeah.
Agreed.
I think we can take that then, Chair. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Right, now we'll go to 11.2, the full council budget report for 21 to 22 and projected budgets for 22 to 24. I will now hand over to Councillor Dr. Walsh and ask him, as Chair of the Policy and Finance Committee, to introduce these proposals, which are set out on pages 80 to 90 of the agenda.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. Yep, my red light's on. Can I first of all pay tribute and thanks particularly to Laura and the staff in the Finance Office, together with the Town Clerk and all the staff of the Council who've actually put this budget together against the backdrop of the pandemic. It's a difficult time every year, budget preparation, but all councils this year have been under the same cosh of the pandemic, working from home and late announcements of government finance contributions. It's not a surprise to anybody in the council. You've all seen it because each section of this has been through the appropriate committees. And for those of you on policy and finance, it's been to the whole of the budget has been there as well. So it's been well chewed over by the programme committees, service committees, and by the policy and finance committee, on which all the committees are represented, and one or two others came and did speak to it. So there are no surprises in here. However, the financial background of the COVID situation has meant that budgeted income has had to be significantly cut back, and examples of there include bank interest, which of course isn't entirely COVID, it's also the world financial situation, and there's had to be a 50% reduction in the bank interest received. Manor House room hire for obvious reasons, social distancing, etc. And the Southfields Jubilee Centre room hire has been cut by a third because of the lack of bookings, because of the restrictions on gatherings. These are all at the moment best estimates, but the real impact will depend on how long the COVID situation remains. My personal view, with some professional input and knowledge from County Council, is that most of the restrictions are going to be in place probably till Easter, and that we may well not be out of a lot of the restrictions until the early summer, and I'm talking about the end of May or early June. So those of us in the community who think that, well, because vaccinations are being rolled out, it's all over bar the shouting, it isn't. And sadly, we're going to still see a lot of personal and family tragedies around us, and we've heard of one or two this evening. So, Chairman, the situation is still fluid and we remain in the pandemic, and it's difficult for all of us. In the current year, these losses of income were largely offset by the cancelling of much of the events programme, and the coming budget envisages a full programme of events for the next year, but of course that is subject to the law and any restrictions that we're operating under, as we do eventually with the immunisation and vaccine programme come out of the COVID emergency. The budget also provides the financial package to support the new capital project, which we've just voted through in the last item, namely the new Keystone Centre and the forthcoming North Little Hampton Community Centre. This budget has incorporated another tranche of revenue budget to ensure the proper running of those facilities and to avoid a larger hike in council tax when they open. In other words, we're already beginning to make the financial provision for their revenue funding, their running, once they're up and open. Most of the other changes in the budget look to address the probable inflationary increase that will arise from new contracts, and these include the town floral arrangements on the roundabouts and the War Memorial and elsewhere, the planters, and the Christmas lights contract, both of which were extended for 1 year during the current year, and therefore do need to be renegotiated during this coming year, and will probably include inflationary increases, although we'll do our best to negotiate those to the best financial advantage for the council. As you know from the news, public sector salaries for all but nurses and healthcare workers are likely to be frozen during the coming year, other than a £250 uplift for those earning less than £24,000 a year, which I'm sure we would all welcome. I personally would wish it was to be more than that, but that's the government has set that down. The budget also incorporates provision for the previously agreed 6-month posts for the 3 apprentices, which we all agreed, and I'm sure members will join me in congratulating all 3 of those apprentices for achieving distinctions in their courses. Well done to them and to their instructors as well. Without doubt, the council will look to become involved in the post-COVID work that will be needed in partnership with Arran District Council, County Council and the voluntary sector. And provision for this can be identified by the council when we review our priorities in the next committee cycle, as the town clerk has already referred to in answering the previous question. Finishing with good news, and it's always nice to have good news, it was projected by Arran District Council that our council tax base, i.e. the number of homes and businesses, would fall for the first time. However, this has not turned out to be true, and the increase has added just under £7,000 just on our council tax base to the precept, allowing our take from reserves for the next year to be reduced from that circulated in the drafts that went to committees. So the final budget sheet, which is in your papers at page 64, you will see the tabulated budget, and the table in purple highlights the budgeted provision for each committee, and that results in a precept for this town council of £1,311,681, which equates for a Band D council taxpayer to £128.84 per year, which is an increase of only £2.53 for the whole year, or just under 5 pence a week extra. And I think that's a remarkable outturn for the finance of this council, and a very, very small extra demand, as I say, of just under 5 pence per week on the average council taxpayer in Littlehampton for all the services that we continue to provide so well through our officers and our employees at the town council. And I want to thank all members of the council as well as the officers for helping to put this budget through the committees and come up with a unanimous support from the committees and policy and finance for the budget that I now propose to you formally to be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dr. Walsh. I have Councillor Emily Seeks.
Thank you. I have spoken to Councillor Walsh before this evening about the increase. I'm always loath to increase council tax because it is, for lots of people, one of their sort of top 3 bills that they've got to try and find money for. And I appreciate our section is just a small chunk of that, but we are looking at increases across the board, and public just see it as council tax is going up again. So I'm happy to support the increase, but the allocation underneath, I think we will need to adapt our priorities to reflect the change in circumstances. So my support for the budget is on the basis that the underlying allocation may well need to be reassessed with a moving situation, and that we will need to consider things like the town centre management role. And I would very much say that we need to focus on supporting business and creating jobs and revenue. We've found out today that Littlehampton's universal credit claimants has increased 100%. So I think we need to sort of get really real and manage every single penny really well, because even when you're on universal credit, you'll still get that council tax bill. So we need to really be mindful of the fact that we're taking money from people that are having a really hard time, and make sure that we spend it on things that directly benefits them with their immediate needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Seeks. I now have Councillor Michelle Monoy.
Hello, Emily pretty much spoke about what I wanted to ask anyway, and it's that I wanted to agree to this budget. I think it's okay, but just with hopefully I'd like it to be able to, that once we've looked at our priorities and with everything changing around us so quickly, that it does have a bit of flexibility in it to move it around depending on what's happening in the town with the pandemic and stuff. Thank you.
I now have Councillor Andrea Turner.
It's just a little query on the recommendation number 4, where, based on what Emily and Michelle have been previously proposing, are we agreeing the existing procedure, but we're going to be changing it via the governance and audit meeting? So I'm just a little bit confused there. I just need a bit of clarification if I could, please. Thank you.
Yes, please.
It is still the existing procedure, and actually that wording is quite clever, because once any procedure changes, that will be the existing procedure. So I don't think you've got a problem there, Councillor Turner.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do I have anyone else who wishes to speak briefly? No, I think that's it.
So if I may just respond, Mr. Mayor, to the 3 points made. I'm very grateful to the comments from 3 councillors who've spoken. To Councillor Emily Seeks, I said to her yesterday, I think it was, that of course the budget is not an authority to spend any money. It's a financial provision for that expenditure. And even under our existing regulations, authority to expend on most of these budget headings has to go through the committees and will continue to do so. And particularly where there are large ticket items, the full case for spending that money will be made and continue to be made. And if the change is made by along the lines of Emily Seeks's proposal after governance and audit, that will be incorporated. And I love the town clerk's work about how existing procedure just transmogrifies into new existing procedure. It's a great town clerk way of speaking. And Michelle Monoy, Councillor Monoy, said much the same thing. To Councillor Turner, the answer, yes, is the same, that we have by law to approve it under our existing procedure, but as I say, as the town clerk has just explained, it will transmogrify, if that's what's agreed, into the new procedures, which will then become the existing procedures. So, as I say, it's a budget provision, it's not authority to spend on all these things, and it does give us the flexibility within year to via money from one heading to another, from one project to another, depending as needs and circumstances change. And given the COVID situation and its fluidity, we need that flexibility to be able to move from one heading to another should the need arise, and to make sure that we actually deliver the best services to the people of Little Hampton. So thank you to those who've spoken, and I invite everybody to support the budget. Thank you. And I think we have to have a name vote because it's the budget.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, you don't.
Oh, it's only parish.
It's principal authorities. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Right. That's a nice, easy procedure.
Unless members, of course, wish to have a named vote.
No, I'm not asking for that. I'm quite happy for it to be by general assent.
Okay.
General assent is fine.
Just put out there are 8 recommendations, and members need to be aware of that in giving general assent.
Yeah, they're listed 1 to 8 on the budget papers. I'm agreed.
Yep, agreed.
Yes, I'm agreed.
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 Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Agreed.
Agreed.
I hear no voices of dissent, Mr. Mayor, so I think you could probably take that as general assent.
Absolutely.
I'm very grateful. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Mayor.
So thank you, Councillor Dr. Walsh, and thank you to all the finance staff who've done a marvellous job working with all the committees and the committee chairs and the town clerk, obviously, and the assistant town clerk. Item 11.3 on the agenda is the external auditor certificate and report for 2019-20, pages 91 to 97 on the agenda, and I will hand over to the town clerk.
Good news, Mr. Mayor. The external auditor has given us a clean bill of health. This will be going through onwards onto governance and audit to look at in detail, but I think when members were talking about scrutiny earlier, this is an important element of members being assured that the council is being run properly.
Can I propose a vote of thanks to our financial officers for securing that clean bill of health for 2 years running from the external auditor?
I'll second that.
Agreed.
Jumped in too fast. I was going to second it, but I'm happy to support.
Thanks, Jill. Agreed.
Thumbs up from Councillor North East, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, excellent. So we don't have any questions on that either. So how could we question a clean bill of health? That would be very negative.
Indeed.
So on that point, we'll move on to item number 12 on the agenda, which is reports of representatives on outside bodies. Can I invite any members to report on any business relating to their outside bodies as elected representatives of the town council?
I have a report from Shop Mobility.
Yes, please, Councillor Turner.
I have sent a copy of it to all councillors this evening, but it's success for special regular And I'd like to commend June Caffin, Councillor June Caffin, who is the manager of Little Hampton Shop Mobility, and she's had this this piece put into the Gazette on the 7th of January, that a very special and regular customer, Millie Harmon, won the bumper December prize of £500 in the Little Hampton Love local prize draw. And the charity would like to extend their sincere congratulations to Millie on her well-deserved win. Indeed, she told June that if it was not for Little Hampton Mobility opening for her by appointment so that she could hire a scooter to do emergency and urgent food shopping, she would have been in dire straits. Little Hampton Shop Mobility is always there to help those during the lockdown and and also when out of the lockdown, and they are supporting all vulnerable health, elderly and disabled people so that they can hire wheelchairs for medical appointments and scooters so that they can shop. And so all hires are by appointment only, but June has been making herself available to answer the phone and has been going into Shop Mobility to allow people to come in for their appointments to pick up the equipment, and I commend her very much for doing so. So I thought you'd all like to know that that's how Little Hampton Shop Mobility has been going on.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Turner. Now I have Councillor Billy Blanchard Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the only updates I can really give is the Little Hampton Sportsfield Management Committee. Obviously, it's a very trying time. It has been over the best part of the past year. They are still obviously doing all they can to make sure that the sports field is successful, and obviously it is the finances that are an issue. So if anyone hears of anything that might be of help to that particular sector, please let me know and I'll feed that across. But they are doing all they can and they do work very hard on that area. And if anyone would be interested when the time is right to go and have a look around, I know they would be keen to show you around, but obviously that's all dependent upon when the time is right. The Little Hampton Bonfire Society, obviously we've not had an event for a little while. They have their AGM on the 10th of February from memory. They again are working very hard to try and put an event on for this coming year, but once again this is all obviously dependent upon what the regulations are and what is allowed at that time. That they are doing their best. It is a new committee, as I've said in the past, and that they are up against it. They're learning all sorts of different bits as they go, but they have been in conversations with all the relevant departments to try and make sure that when possible they can return with a good, safe event, but maybe with a few changes to what we have been used to in the past. So I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I do not have anyone else, so I should move on to item number 13 on the agenda, exempt business, and there is none. So I shall now bring this meeting to a close at 23 minutes past 8. Thank you all for your attendance, thank you to the officers, and thank you to all the backroom staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good night.